Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Welcome to Congregation Beit Tikva, the House of Hope. We're so happy that you're with us for this Shabbat. Welcome to our Cantor, Ephraim, Herrera, and our musicians, Alma and Dankoff. Thank you so much for this beautiful music. We're going to begin tonight with Doror Yikara. May God proclaim freedom for all of us. And it's this kind of a new song, a Sephardi melody.
It's a fun melody that one sings mostly on the Sabbath table, on the Shabbat table, during the Zmirot time when it's Shabbat. Yeah. And can you read us the translation?
Sure. May God proclaim freedom for all sons and daughters, and keep you as the apple of God's eye. Pleasant is your name, it will not be destroyed. Repose, relax on this Shabbat. Let's turn in our Siddurim to page 128. 128, we'll sing with our cantor, Yedid Nefesh, my heart's delight. Let's turn to the blessing for the Shabbat candles. And we're on, we're on page 121 in the middle of the page. First we'll read together in English and then we'll sing the blessing. Page 121. O source of light and truth, creator of the eternal law of goodness, help us to find knowledge by which to live, Lead us to take the words we shall speak into our hearts and our lives. Bless all who enter this sanctuary in need, all who bring the offerings of their hearts. May our worship lead us to acts of kindness, peace, and love.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kishanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu le'adlik ner shel Shabbat.
Let's read together. We're on 124, top of the page. We enter this sanctuary to welcome Shabbat. Within these walls we sit surrounded by numberless generations. Our ancestors built the synagogue as a visible sign of God's presence in their midst. Throughout our long history and our endless wanderings, it has endured. A beacon of truth, love, and justice for all humanity. Its presence guided our ancestors to lives of righteousness, holding up to them a vision of their truest selves. Now we, in our turn, come into this sanctuary to affirm the sacredness of our lives. May we enter this place in peace. May holiness wrap around us as we cross the threshold. Weariness, doubt, the flaws within our human hearts, the harshness of the weak, let these drop away at the door. In the brightness of Shabbat, let peace settle upon us as we lift our hearts in prayer. So we turn to the blessings, the Psalms that welcome us into the spirit of Shabbat. The Kabbalat Shabbat Psalms, beginning with Psalm 95, of course. We're on page 130 in our Siddur. Let's join our voices. We'll read middle of page 130. Come, let us sing joyously to Adonai. Raise a shout for our rock and deliverer. Let us come into God's presence with praise. Let us raise a shout for God in song. For Adonai is a great God, the great ruler of all divine beings. In God's hand are the depths of the earth. The peaks of the mountains are God's. God's is the sea, God made it, and the land which God's hands fashioned. Come, let us bow down and kneel, bend the knee before Adonai, our Maker. For Adonai is our God, and we're the people God tends, the flock in God's care. Oh, if you would but heed God's charge this day. Together, let's read top of page 133. Adonai is sovereign, let the earth exult, the many islands rejoice. Dense clouds are round God. Righteousness and justice are the base of God's throne. O you who love Adonai, hate evil. God guards the lives of God's loyal ones, saving them from the hand of the wicked. Light is sown for the righteous, radiance for the upright. O you righteous, rejoice in Adonai and acclaim God's holy name. So we look forward to Psalm 29, Havul Adonai, a beautiful musical rendition by our Cantor. We're on page 136 with the words of Psalm 29.
מזמור לדוד, הבו לאדוני בנעלים, הבו לאדוני כבוד ועוז, הבו לאדוני כבוד שמו, השתחוו לאדוני בהדרת קודש, כל אדוני על המים, אל הכבוד הרים, אדוני על מים רבים, כל אדוני בכוח, כל אדוני בהדר, כל אדוני שובר ארזים, וישבר אדוני את ארזי הלבנון, וירקידם כמו עגל לבנון וסיריון, כמו בן רמים, כל אדוני חוצב אבות אש, כל אדוני יכיל מדבר, יכיל אדוני מדבר קדש.
We continue singing together. Let's turn the page to 138 and we'll lift up our voices. Lecha dodi likrat kala. O beloved, come to meet the bride. Beloved, come and greet this Sabbath. Page 138. Bottom of page 139. So if you're comfortable and able, please remain standing, and we'll move forward in our prayers to the Chatzi Kaddish, page 144, the half Kaddish. Join us together as we chant the half Kaddish.
Yitgadol v'yitgadol Shmei Rabba, Alma Dankoff Yamlich Malchutei, V'chayechon u'vyomechon, U'chayechon Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala, U'bizman Kariv, V'yimeru Amen. Yeshmei Rabba mevarach, Le'alam me'almel maya, Yitbarach, Yitbarach v'yishtabach, V'yitbar v'yitnaseh, V'yitadar v'yitaleh, V'yitalah, Shnei K'dusha B'rechu, Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, Tushmechata v'nechemata, Damiran be'alma, V'yimeru Amen. We continue with the Baruch Hu. We're on page 146. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach, Baruch Adonai HaMevorach, Le'olam Va'ed. Let's read a different version of the Mariv HaRavim, the first blessing before the Shema. We're in the middle of page 149. 149. This is an hour of change. Within it we stand uncertain on the border of light. Shall we draw back or cross over? Where shall our hearts turn? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? This is the hour of change, and within it we stand quietly on the border of light. What lies before us? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? Baruch atah Adonai, Mariv HaRavim. The second blessing, Avat Olam, middle of page 150. Everlasting love, you offered your people Israel by teaching us Torah and mitzvot, laws and precepts. Therefore, Adonai our God, when we lie down and when we rise up, we will meditate on your laws and your commandments. We will rejoice in your Torah forever. Day and night we will reflect on them, for they are our life, and doing them lengthens our days. Never remove your love from us. Praise to you, Adonai, who loves your people Israel. Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael. Amen. Together we sing the Shema Yisrael on 152. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kavod, Malchuto, Le'olam Va'ed. So please be seated if you're standing at this point. Be comfortable. Let's turn to the V'ahavta chapter. We're on 154, the words from Deuteronomy chapter 6, together in Hebrew. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha v'b'chol nafshecha v'b'chol me'odecha. V'hayu advarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavcha hayom al levavecha v'shinatam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha b'veitecha v'lechtecha v'derech v'shachlecha v'ukumecha v'kshartam le'ot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot bein einecha v'ktabtam al mezuzot beitecha v'visharecha V'man tizkaru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'yitem kedoshim le'Elohechem. Ani Adonai Elohechem,
Asher hotzeti echem me'eretz Mitzrayim li'yot lachem le'Elohim ani Adonai Elohechem. You shall love Adonai your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. Take to heart these instructions with which I charge you this day. Impress them upon your children. Recite them when you stay at home and when you are away, when you lie down and when you get up. Bind them as a sign on your hand. Let them serve as a symbol on your forehead. Inscribe them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Thus you shall remember to observe all my commandments and to be holy to your God. I am Adonai your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I am Adonai your God. Adonai Elohechem Emet. Let's turn to the words of Mi Chamocha from Exodus. We're singing together, top of page 158. Let's turn now in our Sidurim to the beautiful blessing Hashkivenu. We ask God to watch over us, give us peace and comfort in the shadow of the divine wings on this Shabbat evening. The words are on 160 and our music is from Alma and Wendy and our Cantor. Let's turn our attention and sing a few more beautiful verses.
Why don't we?
The Shamru.
Yes.
We're on the top of page 162. We're singing words from Exodus, in fact, from this Torah portion Ki Tisa, we have the words V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et Shabbat lasot et Shabbat ledorotam brit olam, that we shall keep and observe and guard the Sabbath as a covenant for all time. Page 162.
V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat et ha-Shabbat lasot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam brit olam. Beni Uven b'nei Yisrael oti le'olam. Beni Uven b'nei Yisrael Shabbat vayinafash. Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et hashamayim et haaretz, uvayom hashvi'i Shabbat vayinafash. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat et ha-Shabbat lasot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam brit olam.
We turn now to the 7 blessings of the Tefillah. For the the essential 7 blessings of this Shabbat service, we're on 164. We always begin with a verse from Psalm 51. So if you're able, please stand up and sing with us. And we will sing Avot V'Imahot with the first blessing, and then the second blessing on page 168, Ata Gibor.
Adonai Sefatai Tiftach Ufi Anidei Hadecha. Adonai, open up my lips, and my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Tzara, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el HaGadol HaGibor v'Hanora, Elyon, Gomer Chasadim Tovim, Ekonei HaKol, Mezofer Chasdei Avot v'Imahot, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, לחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע. מכלכל חיים בחסד, בחיי הכל ברחמים רבים. סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו בשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומינו מלך, מלך ממית ומחייל, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמנתה להחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי הכל.
reading together on page 171. Days pass and the years vanish, and we walk sightless among miracles. God, fill our eyes with seeing and our minds with knowing. Let there be moments when your presence, like lightning, illumines the darkness in which we walk. Help us to see wherever we gaze that the bush burns unconsumed, and we, clay touched by God, we reach out for holiness and exclaim in wonder, how filled with awe is this place, we did not know it. Baruch atah Adonai ha'el hakadosh. So if you're standing, you're welcome to sit down, relax, be comfortable. Let's read together on 173. May these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day. May this day fulfill its promise. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh haShabbat. Together we're reading on 175. Our Cantor is going to chant this for us, the Ritzeh.
Ritzeh, Ritzeh, Ritzeh Adonai Eloheinu be'amecha Yisrael u'tefilatam be'ahavat tekabel u'tehi leratzon tamid u'tehi leratzon tamid avodat Yisrael amecha el karov lechol korav el karov lechol korav tenei el avadecha v'chanenu baruch atah Adonai sheotecha levadecha be'irana avod sheotecha levadecha be'irana avod.
Let's read together a metaphorical rendition of the Modim, the prayer of thanksgiving. We're on 177. God of goodness, we give thanks for the gift of life, wonder beyond words, for the awareness of soul, our light within, for the world around us so filled with beauty, for the richness of the earth which day by day sustains us. For all these and more we offer thanks. Baruch atah Adonai, atov shimcha, u'lecha na'el lehodot. So we lift up our voices for the words of Shalom Rab. May there be great peace come upon us. We're on page 178 in the Siddur with our Cantor leading us.
Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki ata hu melech Adon lechol hashalom. Ki ata Shalom, Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam.
Let's pause now for our own personal prayers and meditations. We take a few moments at this point in our service to think of our loved ones, our family, our congregants, all of our friends in need of strength and healing, and offer the Mishaberach for all of them. So before we sing this beautiful melody, let's remember our own congregants and loved ones. Want to think of Eliodoro Herrera, the father of Cantor, Ephraim. And some of our congregants, Doreen Hertig, Lynn Kelly, Flo Vinnick, Arlene Vinnick, Bonnie Cantor, Teresa Levy. And do we have some other?
Deborah Gallegos.
And Deborah Gallegos.
My sister Elisheva.
And Cantor's sister Elisheva, who's on her way to South Texas to care for their father, Eliodoro.
Thank you, Rabbi.
So let's sing together. We're in the middle of page 371, Mishaberach Avotenu.
Mishaberach Avotenu Mekor HaBracha the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishaberach imotenu mekor bless those in need of healing,
This is a magnificent Torah portion, Ki Tisa. So much great wisdom and understanding, so much chokhmah comprised and compressed into these 4.5 chapters. We will only discuss one particular aspect of the Torah portion this evening. For all of you who have studied Torah, you know that this portion is all the most famous passages about the creation of the Egel Hazavahav, the golden calf, the moment of idolatry and apostasy committed by the Israelites, because they're waiting for Moses. Moses is up on the mountain for 40 days. People are very nervous. They yell and scream at Aaron and tell him to make something, some image unto which they may bow down and prostrate themselves. And so out of, so to speak, nowhere appears this miniature statue. Another time you and I can study that together. I want to talk about what's happened during this past year. You know, just a year ago, the beginning of March, suddenly our country was shut down. We were enveloped by a terrible plague, by a virus. By the way, the word virus comes from the Latin meaning poison. And, we've been through an extraordinary time in the history of America in the last 12 months, not just the United States, but all over the world. In times of such tsuras, people want orientation. They want to know what's happening, what is going on in the world. That's why they want to come into the sanctuary. And unfortunately, we haven't really been able to gather in the sanctuary for almost 12 months. But this spiritual sanctuary is our place of comfort, of compassion. It's a place for us to pray. Hopefully we find inspiration and a sense of the divine presence here or in your own home as you are praying, so that we don't fall into the abyss of worry and trepidation and vexation. So the question really, the theological question and the big theological question in the Torah portion is, so where is God in all of this? What is God doing if over 520,000 Americans have already died? How can this be? How can this be? And in a sense, Moses is asking the same question to God towards the end of this Torah portion. In that famous chapter, or the last half of chapter 33 of Exodus, Moses is saying to God, I want to see you. I want to know that your transcendence is reality. It's empirical, that somehow we can touch it, feel it, experience it. It's not just all invisible and ineffable. And so as you remember from chapter 33, the beginning, or a few earlier sentences in chapter 33, the Torah tells us Moses had a special relationship with God. He knew God face to face, panim el panim, literally face to face. Then a couple of verses later, it really says something contradictory, and I'll read it for you so I'm accurate in the translation. There is a place by me, by the way, the context is Moses says, I want to see you, God. And here is God's response. There is a place by me, and you shall stand upon the rock. And while my glory, that's a synonym for God's invisible presence, my glory passes by, then I will place you in the cleft of the rock, and I will cover you or shield you with my hand. Think of all the anthropomorphisms going on here. I will shield you with God's hand until I have passed by, meaning God has passed from the presence of Moses. Then I, the Almighty, will take my hand away, and you will see my back. But my face must not be seen. So the simple meaning of these sentences is, Moses, so to speak, can see God, but he can't see God, because God says, my face shall never be seen. You can see the after effect, my back, my achvarai. And the rabbis have an incredible problem with this, because they want to know, well, does Moses really see God? Or is this, Is there something mixed up here? He sees God, but no, then the Almighty says, no, you're not going to see me. No way, because if you want to see me, you'll be dead. Because nobody can, quote, literally see the Almighty. How do they reconcile this difficulty? And it has to do with answering the question of, where is God? Where is God when we really need the Almighty? For example, the Midrash, one Midrash says, we have to think about a face, or punim, in different ways, right? Punim refers to God's revelation of how the divine orders or directs the universe. And this Midrash says, Moses sought to understand how good deeds are rewarded and how it is that the wicked go untroubled. And God answered him, you cannot see my face. In other words, from this Midrashic point of view, the rabbis are saying, some things you can try and understand rationally, but the way God works in the universe is ultimately indiscernible. We can't always know what God is really doing, or what God's providence, how God's providence is affecting us, changing us. Nachmanides, oh, by the way, before I get to Nachmanides, another midrashic interpretation is that the face, that word panim, really means the face worn by divine justice. In other words, we can know a lot of extraordinary things. We can exercise our intellect to such a high level that we can figure out all the possibilities, all the permutations, but when it comes to understanding how God really works in our universe, how God heals us, how God sometimes punishes us, how God takes care of us, the Midrash is saying face means God's sense of divine justice. None of us will ever be able to figure that one out. Not because we're not intelligent enough and spiritual enough, but it is something beyond us. It is part of God's hashgacha, the divine providence. Nachmanides says something else. Nachmanides says you really can't figure out what this is all about, this face-to-face encounter between Moses and the divine, unless you understand the mystical meaning of Torah. In other words, if we just read this incredible set of paragraphs as if they were a novel or a story, we're missing the whole point. Nachmanides says you need to understand the sod of Torah, the secret aspects of Torah. So he says, Kabbalah, the word panim represents the inner Torah, the secrets and the mysteries of Torah. And thus God's back, when it says, but my back, meaning Moses, you'll see the after effect of God, the back is, Moses shall understand the ways that God has already worked in the universe. In other words, when we look at history, sometimes we can figure out why things turned out well or why things turned into a disaster. So God's showing Moses the backward side is a way of saying, you study history, you study what's happened to the Jewish people, maybe you can figure this out. But panim really means the future, and only God knows the future. And so that's how Nachmanides says, you got to study Torah really deeply and go into the Kabbalah to understand what the future may mean. Very few people can understand the future. One other way of understanding this dilemma, because as I said, it comes down to the question, where is God when we are in trouble? What is God doing when we are suffering? What has happened to our world when over 500,000 Americans have died in this past year? Does that mean God forgot about us? Does that mean God somehow was not working in our universe and not taking care of people and exerting divine powers over our world? Is nature triumphant? Are viruses beyond the realm of the divine? So one other way of understanding this is to say, from another midrash, that when we don't understand what it means to look face to face at someone, the midrash says the following. This is from Deuteronomy Rabbah. To teach you that God sometimes appears and sometimes does not. God does not always appear and tell us exactly what's happening. Sometimes God listens, sometimes not. Sometimes the Almighty shall be sought, and sometimes the Almighty will be inaccessible. Sometimes God will be near to us, and sometimes when we think we need the Almighty the most, God is somehow far away. And how so? How do they prove this? They say, look at Moses. It says he spoke to Moses face to face, but then God became invisible and said, no, you'll only see my backside. You'll only see my after side. So it's another way of saying that sometimes revelation is exactly in front of us, so to speak, right in your face, as my grandmother used to say. But the rabbis are pointing out that there's something called Hester Panim, the secret hiding face of the divine presence.
Can you say that again, Rabbi? Hester Panim?
It's called Hester, from the word secret. Hester Panim. The secret face of the divine cannot always be understood nor revealed to us. We may think we know what's happening, but we don't truly know the whole story. We're humans. We're limited. So having given you this, yes, my dear Cantor, what?
Do you know the actual words when it says panim, el panim? Do you know the actual words for that? I want to know what they are. Because I don't remember.
You'll find it in the middle of chapter 33 of Exodus. I won't quote it to you. I won't quote it to you just exactly because I don't want to be incorrect. God, here's part of it. God says, I will make all my goodness and pass before you and will proclaim the name of the Lord before you. God is speaking to Moses. I will be gracious to whom I shall be gracious. I will show mercy on whom I shall show mercy. And then the next sentence is, but you cannot see my face. Earlier in this chapter, the Torah says Moses had this unique relationship with the divine. He knew God, panim el panim. And that's why the rabbis are so concerned. How can it say one thing earlier, and now it says, you can't see my face? So for the last 2,000 years, we've had this dialogue amongst great sages about what does it mean to see someone's face. Think about looking at your loved one, your spouse, your mother, your father, the person you care about the most. Sometimes you look at that face, it's a mystery. Sometimes we can read that face, we've looked at that same face for 20 or 40 years, and we say, I know exactly what you're thinking and feeling. But sometimes we really don't. It's still a mystery. It's that Hester Panim. It's that secret elusiveness that is encompassed in every soul. What I'm trying to say is we are still comforted by the divine. God has not forgotten us. It is not that God has left us and allowed us to be ravaged by the virus. It is rather that we, in our own way, have to do more and more to conquer illness, and not just physical, medical illness, but we have to uplift our souls and do a little better to improve the health, the strength of the human society that we are a part of. We have to improve our own world in so many ways.
That's our duty. We're Jews. We have to do that.
It is our ultimate duty. Thank you. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
And
Thank you, Rabbi.
have a good Shabbat. Thank you so much to Wendy and Alma for the music, and for Zephyr, our musical accompanist, and to Lela for recording this wonderful service. Tomorrow, Shabbat morning, we'll have Torah study as we always do at 9:30. Also want to note that we have beautiful flowers now in our sanctuary, thanks to Casey Cantor, my wife, and these will be here for every Shabbat. Any other special things happening, coming up? Yeah, so we are going to have a Seder in this building for the second night on March 28th. If you'd like to be with us for that Sunday night for the second Seder, please call us as soon as possible or email us and make your reservation. We only have a limited number of seats available at this point. We're limiting our presence in the building, and we'll be socially distant and so forth and so on. The doors will be open, lots of ventilation, but we would like to really have a Seder here. And many of you can see the Seder. We are not Zooming the Seder. We are recording the Seder, and then it'll be posted the very next day. So give us a call if you're going to join us on March 28th. Let's go to our closing prayers on page 586. 586. We all stand up for the Aleinu.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה לעוצר בראשית, שלא עשינו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. נאמר וחיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו
Let's read together on 583 before we come to the Kaddish prayer. page 583. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we remember them. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we remember them. In the opening of buds and in the rebirth of spring, we remember them. In the blueness of the sky and in the warmth of summer, we remember them. In the rustling of the leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we remember them. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we remember them. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember them. When we are lost and sick at heart, we remember them. When we have joys we yearn to share, we remember them. So long as they live, we too shall live, for they are now a part of us as we remember them. On this Shabbat, we recall with love and devotion those whose lives are remembered. For this coming week, Celia Cohen-Lewin, the grandmother of Mark Sanders, Louis Earhart, husband of Doris Francis Earhart, and Ellen Kingsley Hirschfield, the daughter of Judith Kingsley. Are there any other? Please turn to page 598 and we'll say the Kaddish together on 598. Yitkadosh Shmei Rabbah, V'Alma Dankoff V'Amlich Malchutei, V'Chayechon V'Yom Echon, V'Chayei Dechol Beit Yisrael, V'Hagalav V'Zman Karib V'Imru Amen.
יהא שמי רבא מבורך, לעולם ולעלמין חלמיה.
יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלה שמי קדושה ברכו לעילם מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה תאמירן ועלמה ואמרו אמן. יהא שלמה רבה מן שמיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל Imru Amen. Say Shalom Bimrumav, Uyaseh Shalom, Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael, Imru Amen. May the source who has brought harmony and peace into our world bring us peace to the land of Israel, To all of our citizens here in America and all good peoples, we say Amen.
עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו, ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו
Amen.
יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו, ועל כל ישראל,
יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. The Kiddush, the sanctification of the seventh day, the words are on page 123.
סברים רענן רבותיי, ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, בורא פרי הגפן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר קידשנו במצוותיו ורצה בנו, ושבת קודשו באהבה וברצון הנחילנו. זיכרון למעשה בראשית, כי הוא יום תחילה למקראי קודש, זכר לציית מצרים. כי באנו ובחרת ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים. בשבת קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת. אמן. חיים טובים, שבת שלום.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Thank you for being with us.